On 4, John Peel narrates the first of a new series tracing the history of those monsters of the roads in classic trucks.
The truck drivers of America have often been called the last cowboys. But many Americans forget that these road-weary truckers and their predecessors have helped make the American dream come true.
When you're out in the western states in the middle of the night, crossing Montana, you don't see nobody. You are like the last cowboy. You're the only one there.
We carry ice cream, frozen meats,
hazardous materials, medical supplies.
We've carried carpet,
the computer parts.
We transport human bodies,
locomotives, railroad cars, food, general freight.
With a confusing array of state or federal taxes and weight legislation, driving a truck in America today is fraught with bureaucracy. The modern truck, with its satellite tracking systems, onboard computers and air conditioning, is an office and a home on wheels. At the turn of the century, American trucks were little more than motorised buggies.
That's what a one-cylinder engine sounds like running. Well, this truck, you know, just had a one-cylinder engine, very light wheels, nothing but a motorized wagon. It didn't have a lot of power. Built for the mud roads they had back then. And basically they hauled, as you can see, not very much. A few items back and forth to town. 1912, it was called a high-wheeler. Ransom E. Olds built this truck.
Although Olds claimed his high wheeler could haul half a ton and was more efficient than a horse and wagon, it was really little more than a novelty.
But it didn't take Olds long to figure out he needed something bigger and heavier. And by 1914, 1913 actually, he built the first Model J, just the following year after this truck. And there we went to the four-cylinder engine. It's a heavy-duty chain drive, a lot heavier wheels and tires, and geared down for power. This truck could haul a load. This would be truly a truck. And of course, in the early years, there was 1,801 companies built trucks. There was every kind of size and make imaginable. You had your electrics, your gasoline, steam. They had them all.
These little trucks were useful for delivering from farm to market, but the railroad was still king for long-haul transportation. The real problem for trucks was the state of the roads, adequate for a horse and buggy, but hopeless for heavier motorised vehicles. In 1919, future President Ike Eisenhower, a young army officer, took part in a convoy of trucks from Washington, D.C. to San Francisco. The journey was a publicity stunt to demonstrate the terrible state of America's roads. The military felt that without adequate highways, the defence of the nation was at risk. With the roads in such a poor state, early American trucks had to be durable. Mack is one of the most famous names in American trucks. The saying, built like a Mack truck, came from their reputation for rugged and reliable vehicles. Tom Spencer is a restorer with a special affection for Macs.
We found a bunch of trucks up in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, in a building up there. A fellow 92 years old died, and he had all these trucks stored inside in a building. This is an example of what was up there. This is an AB Mac, vintage probably about 1922. Here we have another real nice early AB Mac, solid tires. Everything's in here. Here's the upholstery still in the truck. Look at this beautiful sign on the side. Isaac Finkel and Sons, Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Roasted and packed. Coffee. Yankee Girl. Isn't that neat? They have what they call an express body on them, or a flare side body. They're shaft drive ABs. This one still has the canvas curtains on the side. A little worse for wear, but that's what used to keep the weather off you back in the old days. Diamond City Beef Company.
The AB's big sister was the AC. Its pugnacious-looking exterior hid some surprisingly advanced engineering.
Another interesting, here's an engine out of an AC Mac. Look at the aluminum used. Look at this beautiful casting. Remember, this was back in the 20s. All cast aluminum. So aluminum castings to Honda and the rest of these cars is nothing new. Mac was doing it back in the 20s.
Ex-driver and truck enthusiast Bud Dawson.
This is a 1916 AC chain-driven Mac, produced in Allentown, Pennsylvania in 1916. This is the very first one off the assembly line. Okay, the first thing you do is you turn the fuel. You turn on the petrol. You can also drop your petrol in the priming cups. You open the petcocks, and you will hear the compression. This is for cold starting. You bring it up to the compression, you flip the impulse coupling. The impulse coupling on the magneto spins the mag real fast and gives it a hot shot of spark in the start position.
If the AC's starting procedure is a little involved, the driving experience is simple and familiar.
You have a 3-speed transmission with 1 reverse. First is all the way over to the right and back. Give it a little bit of petrol, a little throttle. Leave the clutch out. Bring it up to a speed. And then you go to second gear. Now I'm in second gear. I'll wind it out. Now we're in third gear. We're in high gear. At the front is the radiator. The hot air is thrown off to the side on the outside and not on the inside. One might say, well, they should have a guard over there. Protect your feet. Well, common sense, you don't stick your feet in the fan.
The AC, or Bulldog, became the world's most famous truck.
It came from the First World War. The Mack Bulldog was named in Europe and France. It was as rugged as a bulldog. And also as ugly.
If the American West had been won on horseback, its cities and roads were now going to be built on the back of a truck.
But this vehicle weighs 9,800 pounds empty. It will haul 10,000 pounds, which is 5 tons. 5 tons was a terrific amount of weight for a team of horses and a wagon. Almost impossible.
The horse and the mud roads were things of the past. America needed concrete highways, and the Bulldog's simple and robust design was converted to every kind of construction vehicle. The basic chassis was so tough that many bulldogs continued working well into the 1950s.
We got to show you this one. That's a 1948 flathead Cadillac. Somebody took the Cadillac V8 engine and the automatic transmission and put it in this old AC Mac. Had to get a little more cooling, so they cut the hood out. Cut out part of the frame here on this breastplate. Get a little more air into the radiator. Now he's got the radiator up front in this to cool this truck, rather than back here. These were the original radiators on this. Detroit, Michigan is where this truck came from. We were out there and this old man comes in the yard out there, comes hobbling in on a cane. He says, I drove that truck for 34 years. I says, isn't that something? He says, one day he pulled in the yard, I had a ticket in my hand. I gave it to the boss because the boss used to pay all the tickets. Boss looked at it, he says, holy smokes, he says, 71 miles an hour. Boss looks at him and he says, I wonder how fast that truck will go. And the guy says 72. I wouldn't want to be in it because, God forbid, it still had the old AC Mac brakes, and that's a real problem.
Brakes were very poor, especially going downhill. When you went downhill, you wanted to make sure that you geared the transmission down to make the engine operate like a brake too. So what you would do was put it back into second gear. And that acted like a brake. It would hold you back.
By the time the AC went out of production in 1938, the Bulldog had given Mack a trademark and played its part in building modern America. In the 40s and 50s, it was to be trucks that would help make America become a vision of the future that was the envy of the world.
So there you are then, new engines, new interiors, restyled front and rear, the new face of the Vauxhall Astra.
Yes, but our customers deserve more. Any thoughts?
How about power steering as standard deck throughout the range?
Think of the cost. Only a buffoon would consider it.
Well, your power steering was inspirational.
Thank you very much. You haven't seen anything of GD, have you?
Yes, I thought a spell in the vehicle exterior luster department might do him good.
To help you cope with the unexpected, our financial plans adapt. Ally Dunbar, for the life you don't yet know.
Antiques Roadshow expertise at your fingertips with the new BBC A to Z of Antiques Hunting. Discover Britain's hidden treasure in only 20 weekly parts.
America can't wait. You want what you want when you want it. So the trucks are rolling. Rollin' trucker, keep rolling along. Rollin' trucker, we're rolling so.
Despite PR films like this that showed trucking as a vital service to the nation, in the 30s and 40s, Americans thought trucks chewed up the roads and didn't pay enough tax. But like them or not, Americans were becoming dependent on trucks.
This particular truck is a livestock truck. You haul cattle and hogs in it. If you went a long distance with cattle, you had to stop and give them rest. You had to water them, let them go to the bathroom, and give them a little feed.
In the days before animal rights, just how the famous American T-bone arrived on the table didn't matter. As long as it was fresh and untrampled, the trucker had done his job.
You had to be careful. You had to load your cows tight in the trailer, and you had to keep a constant eye on them to make sure none of them laid down. If you loaded them tight, they would stand up. They would stay up. We used to have electric shockers about so long, and we used to poke them to make sure to get them up if they got down.
This 1930 GMC, with its enclosed sleeper cab, was beginning to look like an American truck.
You would get to the stockyard, maybe they didn't want the cattle at that particular time, and it was a time for you to lay down and take a nap or a rest. This truck only runs 30 miles an hour, so if you was going any great distance, it took a long time.
Sleeper cabs were unusual in the 1930s, but they were later to become essential to the long-haul truck.
From 30 miles away, from across the river, from 100 miles in the valley, from the railroad yards, from the docks, from 200 miles across the mountains.
As trucks started to cross state boundaries, bureaucracy for the drivers and operators increased.
Singing wheels that serve...
You would have to have the correct permit. You would have a state license plate for your state, and your state should have a reciprocity agreement with the next state. If it did not have a reciprocity agreement, you would have to buy a permit to go into that state. They usually allowed you in there for 2 days, 48 hours, sometimes 72 hours. But you always had to have these permits.
Another crucial invention to the long-haul truck was the articulated trailer, made possible by a device called the fifth wheel. Secured by a steel kingpin, the fifth wheel allowed the trailer to be attached and articulated to the tractor unit. Detachable trailers decreased turnaround time, so that the truck could get back on the road and earn money. America still did not have the interstates that Eisenhower thought would be vital to the defense of the nation, but at least it was now possible to drive coast to coast without getting stuck in the mud. This 1937 International managed about 4 miles to the gallon. For trucks to go truly long haul, the truck makers were going to have to end their love affair with petrol engine gas guzzlers and think seriously about the more economical and robust diesel engine. With petrol at only 17 cents a gallon, there was no great hurry to change. By adding a supercharger to a diesel engine, West Coast company Kenworth achieved gasoline-style performance.
This was the tractor that pulled the mountains, the Rockies, in the Great Western Plains. This is a 1938 Kenworth. This is a Western tractor. Now this truck is pretty much basically the same, except for the chrome air cleaners, the chrome mirrors, and the chrome horns. But this is the engine. This has a Cummins diesel engine in with a belt-driven supercharger. This engine was ahead of its time. A gas engine this size and a diesel engine like this, the gas will give you more power because there's more BTUs, British Thermal Units of Measurement of Heat, in a gasoline engine than a diesel. But the diesel is the longevity. It'll run 3 times longer, and it'll give you 3 times better the fuel. And this is what you're after, was the fuel economy of the diesel engine.
On great construction projects, brawny giants move with ponderous, powerful dignity, carrying tremendous loads easily and dependably.
The economy of diesel suddenly became important. America was building itself out of the Depression with a massive road construction program that would make long-haul trucking a reality.
Our modern civilization depends upon the great network of highways lacing America into one great community. And trucks built the highways. The smooth ribbons...
As the highways developed, they started building, of course, much bigger trucks. This particular truck here is an LTL Mack. This would have been what you would consider a West Coast truck. These trucks weren't even allowed here on the East Coast because the roads were too narrow and too tight, back even into the late 40s. These were the original, let's say, highway trucks. These were high horsepower, big, long, heavy trucks. Could haul big, heavy loads. And they'd haul them over the mountains, over the Rocky Mountains, say from Albuquerque or Chicago to California.
As the trucks got larger and the routes more challenging, specialist carrier companies proliferated. After the Second World War, companies like PIE, Pacific Intermountain Express, invested heavily in highly organised operations that capitalised on the post-war boom in America.
Schedule 180 just arrived to Kansas City. And add this one, 283 out of St. Louis for Los Angeles. Yes, Lloyd? How many units on the road today? 182, 90 westbound and 92 eastbound.
The latest Peterbilt cab-over trucks meant that PIE could haul longer trailers and still be within state regulations. But the truck industry was still fighting a public relations battle. PIE wanted to take trucking out of the fly-by-night greaseball era.
The highway and the motor carrier are two of our great economic assets. Assets that must continue to be developed and maintained at the highest point of safety and efficiency if our American way of life is to continue to grow and prosper.
In 1947, PIE spent $70,000 on the Mighty Mite. The Mighty Mite was a half-scale Peterbilt cab-over truck and trailer that toured county fairs to create a cuddly image for trucking. Behind the corporate public relations, life behind the wheel was still work for a tough guy. This 1958 autocar with a stainless steel Fruhoff trailer was a typical rig of the time.
Driving a big truck is nothing like it. It's a real man's job, I guess.
With no power-assisted steering, it may have been a man's job, but George Schroyer was little more than a boy when he drove his first truck.
My first experiences, I remember I was about 11 years old and I drove from Salina partway to Detroit, Michigan, and that's pretty young to be driving a truck. I suppose I could just about see over the steering wheel even.
Like today's trucks, the original owner of George's turbocharged autocar would have specified whatever combination of engine or gearbox most suited the job.
There's a Cummins 262 engine. Standard engines about of that day was 160, 180 horsepower. Spicer 4x4 transmission. Yeah, you have to learn to shift the gears, and I didn't do a very good job there. I could hear the teeth clang. This being the 262, we'll have the turbo, and that was a classic of 1958, 1960. If you had an engine like a 262, you had a real truck.
By the late 50s, the long-haul truck was established, and Ike's interstate system was under construction. In this 1958 Kenworth cab-over, the driver sat on top of a massive engine. If you could stand the noise, it would go on forever.
In the last 30 years, I accumulated a little over 5 million miles on this truck. I put a little over 2 million with Brady Motor Freight. I put a little over 1 million miles with Wright Motor Lines, Rocky Ford, Colorado, and a little tiny bit over 2 million miles with Ace Lines out of Des Moines, Iowa. And very proud to say that I was the only guy in this country to drive the same truck for 35 years and put 5 million miles on a piece of equipment. I think that's a great thing.
The doors of this truck stop on Interstate 80 haven't closed since the route opened in 1964. The truckers of the 90s still have a maverick image, but the road and the truck are the enduring images of American folk culture. Without them, the West would still be wild.
Me and Jabbo was going to town, riding a gray horse and leading a hound. Tom Bob, the old horse jump. Old Jabbo, this guy was gone. Old Jabbo, he promised me, before he died, he'd make a will for me. Live so long, his head got bald. Got out of no good down at all.
Lung Poly, where an identical holiday can cost you 25% less.